The simulation room hummed with energy as 12 cadets took their positions at their control stations. Katie Brooks checked her display one more time, watching the green dots that represented her squad's ships floating in the dark void of simulated space. Around her, cadets from 6 different species focused on their own screens, their faces lit by the soft glow of tactical displays. Commander Vex Thor stood at the center of the room, his massive frame casting long shadows across the floor. He was Krellian, a species known throughout the galaxy for their strength and their rigid sense of military honor. His scales were deep red, almost black in the dim light, and his yellow eyes swept across the cadets with cold calculation. He had been teaching at the Galactic Defense Academy for 15 years, and in that time he had developed a reputation. Cadets whispered that he was brilliant but cruel, especially to humans. "Begin simulation," Vex Thor's voice rumbled through the room. Katie's screen erupted with red dots. Enemy ships, dozens of them, appeared from all directions. Her squad of 5 ships was positioned near a small civilian station that held 3,000 people. The mission parameters were clear: defend the station at all costs. She quickly assessed the situation. The enemy had overwhelming numbers. Their ships were faster and better armed. A direct fight would be suicide. Katie glanced at the station's specifications on her secondary screen. Standard shields, basic weapons, but something caught her eye. The station had industrial mining equipment, powerful lasers designed to cut through asteroids. "Brooks, what are your orders?" Lieutenant Crane, a Velaran cadet with blue skin and large eyes, asked through the communication channel. He was piloting one of her squad's ships. Katie made her decision. "All ships fall back to the station. Pattern Delta 3. "That's a retreat formation," Crane said, confusion in his voice. "Trust me," Katie replied. Around the room, other squads were engaging the enemy directly. Explosions lit up their screens as ships traded fire. Katie watched 2 squads lose half their vessels in the first minute. The simulation was designed to be brutal. Her ships reached the station and positioned themselves in a defensive sphere. The enemy forces closed in, probably expecting an easy victory. Katie waited, her finger hovering over her control panel. The red dots came closer. Closer. "Now," she whispered. She activated the station's mining equipment. The powerful industrial lasers, designed to slice through solid rock, fired in a coordinated pattern that Katie had programmed 30 seconds earlier. The lasers weren't meant to be weapons, but at close range, against ships that thought they were facing a helpless target, they were devastating. 3 enemy ships vanished from the screen immediately. The others scattered in confusion. In that moment of chaos, Katie ordered her squad to attack. They struck hard and fast, picking off disoriented enemies before retreating behind the station's shields. The enemy regrouped and attacked again. Katie had already moved to her next trick. She had her ships release their emergency fuel reserves, creating a cloud of volatile gas around the station. When the enemy pushed through, one shot from the mining lasers ignited the cloud. More red dots disappeared. The pattern continued. Katie used every trick she could think of, turning the station itself into a weapon. She emptied cargo containers to create debris fields. She manipulated the station's gravity generators to throw enemy ships off course. She even convinced the simulation's automated systems that there was a larger fleet hiding behind the station by creating false sensor readings. 20 minutes later, the simulation ended. Katie's squad had lost 1 ship. The station survived. Every single enemy vessel was destroyed. The lights came up in the simulation room. Katie blinked, her eyes adjusting. Around her, other cadets were staring at their screens in shock. Most of them had lasted less than 5 minutes. Some had managed to evacuate the station before it was destroyed, which was considered a successful outcome for this particular scenario. Commander Vex Thor walked slowly toward Katie's station. His footsteps echoed in the silent room. She stood up, straightening her uniform. At 5 feet 6 inches, she barely reached his chest. He looked down at her, his reptilian face unreadable. "Explain," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Sir, I used the available resources to create tactical advantages. The station had mining equipment that could be repurposed. The enemy AI didn't account for non-standard weapon systems, so I exploited that weakness." "You cheated," Vex Thor said flatly. The room went completely silent. Every cadet turned to look. Cheating was the worst accusation at the academy, grounds for immediate expulsion. "No, sir," Katie said calmly. I improvised with available resources. The simulation was not designed for that scenario. Vexthor stepped closer, looming over her. You accessed the programming. You altered the parameters. You hacked the system to create an impossible victory. Sir, I did not. I simply used the station's equipment in ways the simulation didn't expect. Every action I took was within the rules. Vexthor's eyes narrowed. You will confess to cheating, Cadet Brooks, or I will launch a formal investigation. I will examine every second of your simulation. I will review every keystroke. And when I find evidence of tampering, and I will find it, you will not only be expelled from this academy, you will be barred from serving in any military capacity across all allied worlds. Katie felt the weight of his threat. She knew what he was doing. He was using his authority and his physical presence to intimidate her into admitting something she hadn't done. She had seen bullies before on Earth and here. They all worked the same way. Some cadets would back down. Some would get angry and make things worse. Katie had learned a different approach from her grandfather, a veteran who had fought in Earth's last great war. He had taught her that the strongest response to a threat wasn't aggression or submission. It was giving the other person a way out while maintaining your dignity. She looked up at Commander Vexthor. She didn't flinch or look away, and slowly a small smile crossed her face. It wasn't mocking or arrogant. It was almost sad, as if she understood something about him that he didn't understand about himself. Sir, she said quietly, her voice carrying across the silent room, would you like a second chance at this conversation? The question hung in the air like a challenge and an offer at the same time. Every cadet in the room held their breath. No one spoke to Commander Vexthor like that. No one questioned his authority. No one smiled when he was threatening them. Vexthor's expression transformed. His eyes went wide with shock, then narrowed with rage. His scales seemed to darken. When he spoke, his voice was barely controlled fury. You dare? He hissed. You dare to speak to me with such disrespect? I am offering you mercy, human. I am giving you the chance to confess and face a lesser punishment. Instead, you mock me? I'm not mocking you, sir, Katie said, her smile fading but her voice remaining steady. I'm offering you a chance to reconsider your accusation before you make a mistake. The only mistake, Vexthor said, drawing himself to his full height, was allowing humans into this academy. You are undisciplined. You ignore proper tactics. You have no honor. And you, Cadet Brooks, are finished here. He turned to address the entire room. This simulation is concluded. All cadets are dismissed except Brooks. You will remain here while I contact the Commandant. The other cadets began to file out quickly, not wanting to be caught in the fallout. A few looked back at Katie with sympathy. Others looked relieved it wasn't them facing Vexthor's anger. Katie stood at attention waiting. She had made her choice. She wouldn't back down from the truth no matter what it cost her. But she had also planted a seed. She had given Commander Vexthor a second chance. Whether he took it or not was up to him. The door closed behind the last cadet, leaving Katie alone with the furious Krellian commander. The real test was just beginning. Admiral Torven sat behind her desk, her silver feathers ruffled in what humans had learned to recognize as irritation. The Valoran commander of the Galactic Defense Academy was known for her patience and diplomatic skill, but even she had limits. Before her stood Commander Vexthor, rigid with barely contained anger, and Cadet Katie Brooks, standing at attention with a calm expression that seemed to infuriate the Krellian even more. Let me understand this correctly, Admiral Torven said, her melodic voice carrying an edge. Commander Vexthor, you are accusing Cadet Brooks of hacking the simulation system. Cadet Brooks, you deny this and claim you simply used unconventional tactics. Is this accurate? Yes, Admiral, both said at the same time. Admiral Torven touched a control on her desk. A holographic display appeared, showing the recording of Katie's simulation. They watched in silence as the human cadet turned a defensive disaster into an unexpected victory using mining lasers, fuel clouds, and false sensor readings. When it finished, the Admiral looked at Vexthor. Commander, I see no evidence of system tampering. The cadet used the station's legitimate equipment in creative ways. This is not cheating. This is tactical thinking. She violated the spirit of the exercise, Vexthor insisted. The simulation was designed to teach cadets when to retreat, when to accept that some battles cannot be won. She refused to learn that lesson. Or perhaps, Katie said quietly, I learned a different lesson, that humans don't accept impossible situations as final. We look for options others don't see. Cadet Brooks, Admiral Torvan warned. You will speak when addressed. My apologies, Admiral. Katie returned to attention, but Vexthor's scales had darkened further. This is exactly what I mean, he said. Humans lack discipline. They think the rules do not apply to them. They improvise when they should follow procedure. This cadet should not be here. Katie took a breath. She had studied the Academy regulations thoroughly, as her grandfather had taught her to always know the rules before you broke them or used them. There was one regulation, old and rarely invoked, that might apply here. Admiral Torvan, Katie said formally, I request to invoke Protocol 7 of the Academy Charter. Trial by capability, the room went silent. Admiral Torvan's feathers smoothed in surprise. Vexthor's expression shifted from anger to something that looked almost like satisfaction. Cadet, do you understand what you are requesting? The Admiral asked carefully. Yes, Admiral. Protocol 7 states that when a cadet is accused of lacking the capability to meet Academy standards, they may challenge the accusation through a formal demonstration. If I can prove my methods and capabilities in a controlled test, the accusation must be withdrawn. And if you fail, Vexthor said, his voice almost eager, you will be expelled immediately with no possibility of appeal. Is that what you want, human? Katie met his eyes. I want the chance to prove I belong here, sir. That's all I've ever wanted. Admiral Torvan considered for a long moment. Protocol 7 has not been invoked in over 20 years. It is designed for exceptional circumstances. Commander Vexthor, if you agree to this trial, you will design 3 tests. Each test will evaluate a different aspect of military capability. If Cadet Brooks fails even one test, she will be expelled. If she succeeds in all 3, you will issue a public apology and submit to a review of your teaching methods. Do you accept these terms? Vexthor's smile was cold. I accept, Admiral. I will design tests that will prove beyond any doubt that this human does not have the capability to serve in the Galactic Defense Forces. Very well, Admiral Torvan said. You have 48 hours to design the tests. Cadet Brooks, you are dismissed from regular classes until this matter is resolved. I suggest you prepare yourself. Katie saluted and left the office. As she walked down the corridor, her hands were shaking slightly. She had just gambled her entire future on 3 tests that would be designed by someone who wanted to see her fail. But she had also bought herself a fair chance, which was more than she had before. Her roommate, Linda Carter, was waiting outside their quarters. The moment she saw Katie's face, she knew something major had happened. What did you do? Linda asked. Katie explained everything as they entered their small room. Linda listened with growing horror. You challenged Vexthor to a trial? Katie, he's going to design impossible tests. He's been waiting for a chance to kick a human out of this academy for years. You just gave it to him. Maybe. Katie sat on her bunk, finally allowing herself to show how scared she was. But Linda, he was going to expel me anyway. At least this way I have a fighting chance. A fighting chance against tests designed by a combat veteran with decades of experience who hates humans? Those are terrible odds. Katie smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Humans are good with terrible odds. It's kind of our thing. Word spread through the academy faster than light. By evening, every cadet knew about the challenge. The human who had beaten an impossible simulation was now facing 3 impossible tests. Reactions were mixed. In the cafeteria that night, Katie noticed the stares and whispers. Some cadets looked at her with respect. Others seemed to think she was foolish. A group of Krellian cadets at one table were openly laughing, probably taking bets on how quickly she would fail. But there were also surprises. A Velaran cadet named Danny Cole approached her table. He was in his final year, respected by almost everyone. Cadet Brooks, he said formally, I wanted to say that what you did today took courage. Vexthor has been harsh on many of us over the years. Someone needed to stand up to him. Thank you, Katie said, surprised. I also wanted to tell you something. Danny lowered his voice. 5 years ago, a Valoran cadet challenged Vexthor under Protocol 7. Different circumstances, but similar setup. He failed the second test. Katie felt her stomach drop. What was the test? Endurance in high gravity. Vexthor designed it for Krellian physical standards. Be ready for that. He will exploit every biological difference between humans and his species. Danny walked away before Katie could thank him, but the warning settled into her mind like ice water. That night, Katie couldn't sleep. She lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling, thinking about the trials ahead. Linda was snoring softly in the bunk above her. Outside their window, alien stars shone in unfamiliar patterns. Katie thought about her grandfather. He had been a soldier in the war that finally united Earth's nations. He had fought in battles where victory seemed impossible, and he had taught her something that most other species didn't seem to understand about humans. "We're not the strongest species," he had told her once, when she was young and discouraged about being smaller than the other kids. "We're not the fastest or the smartest. But we have something special, Katie. We're stubborn. We don't know when to quit. And we get more dangerous the more chances we get to learn from our mistakes." That's what she had offered Vexthor, a second chance. Not because she was trying to insult him, but because she understood something. Every challenge, every conflict, every fight was a chance to learn. Most species saw second chances as mercy or weakness. Humans saw them as opportunities. The next day, announcement screens throughout the academy displayed the schedule. The first trial would be in 3 days, tactical command. The second trial, 2 days after that, physical endurance. The final trial, 1 day later, direct combat. Katie stood in front of the announcement screen reading the details. Other cadets gathered around, some offering encouragement, others just curious to see the spectacle. 7 days, Linda said beside her. 7 days to prepare for tests designed by someone who wants you to fail.
How are you going to do this?
Katie smiled, and this time it was genuine. The same way humans always do. "I'm going to study. I'm going to train. And I'm going to show them that giving me chances to fail is the same as giving me chances to learn." She walked away from the announcement screen with purpose. She had 7 days. It wasn't much time, but humans had done more with less. And Commander Vexthor was about to learn what happened when you gave a human not just a second chance, but a third and fourth as well. The real test was about to begin. The Tactical Operations Center was packed with cadets and instructors. News of the trial had spread beyond the academy, and several observers from various species' military branches had arrived to watch. Katie stood at the command console, her hand steady despite the crowd behind her. Commander Vexthor was at the control station, preparing to launch the simulation he had designed specifically to defeat her. Admiral Torven addressed the room. "The first trial will test tactical command. Cadet Brooks will face a scenario designed by Commander Vexthor. She must achieve victory or survival for at least 2 hours with acceptable losses. Failure means expulsion. Begin." The simulation activated. Katie's display showed a space station again, but this one was much larger. A civilian habitat holding 20,000 people. Her defending force was small, 7 ships of mixed capabilities. The enemy force that appeared made several cadets gasp. Over 50 enemy vessels organized into coordinated battle groups with support carriers. Vexthor had not made this easy. Katie studied the tactical display quickly. The enemy was using standard Krellian battle formations, heavy on direct assault and overwhelming force. They would expect her to either defend the station directly or evacuate civilians and retreat. Both strategies would likely fail given the numbers involved. She had spent the last 3 days studying human military history. Not just space battles, but conflicts from Earth's past. She had read about ancient generals who won against impossible odds. They all had something in common. They changed the nature of the battle itself. "All ships," Katie said into the command channel, "execute scatter pattern Omega. Make it look panicked." Her 7 ships broke formation and scattered in different directions. To the observers, it looked like chaos. The enemy force pursued, splitting up to chase down what they thought was a broken defense. But Katie had positioned each ship carefully. As the enemy group separated, she triggered the station's emergency beacon, broadcasting a false distress signal that indicated the station was about to explode. The enemy forces hesitated, their programming telling them to pull back from a potential blast radius. In that moment of confusion, Katie's scattered ships regrouped behind the enemy position and struck at their command carrier. 3 coordinated strikes took down its shields, and a 4th destroyed its communication array. The enemy fleet suddenly lost its central coordination. "Now they're fighting blind," Katie muttered, already planning her next move. She had her ships release sensor decoys, small drones that mimicked the signatures of warships. The enemy fleet, without centralized command and facing what appeared to be a much larger force, began to make mistakes. Some groups attacked the wrong targets. Others held position, waiting for orders that weren't coming. Katie exploited every mistake. She used the station's tractor beams to grab enemy fighters and throw them into each other. She positioned her ships so that enemy fire would sometimes hit their own vessels. She created false communications that made it seem like enemy reinforcements were attacking from another vector, causing parts of the fleet to turn away from the station. It wasn't honorable by Krellian standards. It was deception, manipulation, psychological warfare, but it was effective. 90 minutes into the simulation, the enemy force broke and retreated. Katie had lost 2 ships and the station had sustained minor damage. 20,000 civilians survived. The lights came up. The room was silent for a moment, then several cadets began to applaud. Even some of the alien military observers looked impressed. Katie turned to look at Vexthor. His expression was stone. "You did not fight with honor," he said coldly. "You used deception and tricks." "I used tactics," Katie replied. "I achieved victory with minimal losses against overwhelming odds." "That was the objective, sir." Admiral Torvin nodded. "The first trial is complete. Cadet Brooks has succeeded. The second trial will commence in 48 hours. Katie stepped down from the console. As she walked past Vexthor, she said quietly, "Ready for that second chance yet, sir?" His eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. 2 days later, Katie stood at the starting line of the endurance course. It had been set up in a special high-gravity training facility. The gravity was set to Krellian standard, 1.5 times Earth normal. For Katie, every step would feel like carrying a 50-pound weight. The course itself was brutal. 3 miles of obstacles, walls to climb, trenches to cross, and barriers to overcome. Vexthor had designed it to favor his species' natural strength and heavier bone structure. Several cadets watching the preparation had already said it was impossible for a human to complete. Linda had tried to convince Katie to forfeit this trial. "It's not fair," she had argued. "He's using biology against you. No one could blame you for failing a test designed for a different species." But Katie had refused. She knew that if she quit now, she would prove Vexthor right about humans lacking commitment. More than that, she would disappoint everyone back on Earth who was following her story. Humans didn't quit just because something was hard. "Begin," Admiral Torvin announced. Katie started running. Immediately, she felt the extra gravity pulling at her. Every step required more effort. Her breathing became labored faster than normal. By the time she reached the first obstacle, a 15-foot wall, her legs were already burning. She jumped and grabbed the top edge, pulling herself up. Her arms shook with the effort. In normal gravity, this would be easy. Here it felt like pulling twice her body weight. She made it over and dropped down the other side, landing hard. The course continued. A trench filled with mud that she had to crawl through. Monkey bars that stretched for 50 feet. A rope climb. Each obstacle was difficult in normal gravity and nearly impossible in high gravity. Katie fell twice in the first mile. Each time she got back up, she could hear her heart pounding in her ears. Her muscles screamed, but she kept moving forward. Commander Vexthor watched from the observation deck. "She will not finish," he said to Admiral Torvin. "Human biology cannot sustain this level of exertion in high gravity for the required distance." But Katie had studied more than just tactics. She had researched human endurance capabilities. Humans weren't the strongest species, but they had evolved as persistence hunters. They could keep going long after other species would collapse. Humans could push through pain in ways that other species found illogical. At the 2-mile mark, Katie was moving slower, but she was still moving. Other cadets had gathered to watch. Some were taking bets on whether she would finish. Others just watched in silence, witnessing something they had never seen before. A human refusing to acknowledge the limits of physics and biology. Katie reached a section where she had to carry heavy containers across a balance beam. The containers weighed 30 pounds each in Earth gravity. Here they weighed 45 pounds. She lifted one onto each shoulder and started across. Halfway over, her leg cramped. She stopped swaying, her body demanding that she quit. She thought about her grandfather again. "Pain is just information," he had told her. "It's telling you that you're pushing limits. But limits are meant to be pushed. That's how you find out what you're really capable of." Katie finished crossing the beam. She set down the containers and kept going. The final obstacle was another wall, 20 feet high this time, with no handholds. Cadets were supposed to use upper body strength to pull themselves up a rope. Katie's arms were shaking so badly she could barely grip the rope. She tried once and fell back down. The crowd murmured. This was where she would fail. Katie stood up, breathing hard. She looked at the wall, then at the rope. Then she looked around and saw the containers she had just carried. An idea formed in her exhausted mind. She stacked 2 containers next to the wall, climbed onto them, and jumped. The extra height let her grab a ridge halfway up the wall. From there, she used her legs to push herself higher, finding tiny imperfections in the wall that she could use as footholds. It wasn't the intended method, but it worked. She pulled herself over the top of the wall and dropped down the other side. The finish line was 50 feet ahead. Katie could barely see straight. Her vision was tunneling. Her legs were wobbling, but she ran. She crossed the finish line and collapsed immediately. Medical staff rushed forward, but Katie waved them off. She lay on the ground, breathing hard, staring up at the ceiling. Every muscle in her body hurt. But she had finished. The time display showed she had completed the course in just under the 2-hour limit. Barely passing, but passing, she heard footsteps approaching. Commander Vexthor looked down at her. For a moment, she thought she saw something in his expression. Not quite respect, but maybe the beginning of doubt. Katie managed to smile up at him through her exhaustion. 3 chances now, sir. Most humans stop at 2. Vexthor's jaw tightened. Without a word, he turned and walked away. Katie let her head fall back to the ground. 2 trials down, 1 to go, and the final trial would be the hardest of all. The training arena was the largest facility in the academy, a circular space with observation galleries on all sides. Every seat was filled. Cadets from every species pressed against the railings to watch. Word had spread across multiple star systems about the human Cadet, who had won 2 impossible trials. Now came the final test, direct combat against Commander Vexthor himself. Katie stood on one side of the arena floor, wearing light training armor and holding a stun baton. The weapon would deliver a powerful shock but wouldn't cause permanent damage. Across from her, Vexthor wore similar armor, but on his massive frame it looked like barely more than decoration. His weapon was identical to hers, but in his hands it looked like a child's toy. Admiral Torven's voice echoed through the arena. The third trial, combat proficiency. This match will continue until one fighter yields or is rendered unable to continue. First fighter to score 3 successful strikes wins. Lethal force is prohibited. Medical teams are standing by. Fighters, take your positions. Katie rolled her shoulders, trying to loosen muscles that were still sore from the endurance course. She had spent the last 24 hours recovering and studying. Not just combat techniques, but something more important. She had watched recordings of Vexthor's previous matches. The Krellian commander fought with brutal efficiency. He used his strength and reach to overwhelm opponents quickly. But Katie had noticed something. He had patterns, preferred angles of attack, habitual movements. Everyone did. The question was whether she could survive long enough to exploit them. Begin, Admiral Torven commanded. Vexthor moved immediately, closing the distance with shocking speed for someone so large. His stun baton came down in a powerful overhead strike. Katie dove to the side, rolling away. The spot where she had been standing cracked from the impact. She scrambled to her feet as Vexthor turned and swung again. This time she blocked with her own baton, but the force of his blow sent painful vibrations through her arms and knocked her back several feet. She could hear the crowd reacting, gasps and murmurs. For the next 2 minutes, Katie did nothing but defend and evade. Vexthor's attacks were relentless. She blocked when she had to, dodged when she could. Each successful block left her arms numb. Each dodge brought her closer to the arena walls where she would be trapped. Finally, Vexthor caught her with a sweep that knocked her legs out from under her. She hit the ground hard and his baton came down toward her chest. She barely rolled away in time. The strike left another crack in the arena floor. Katie got to her feet again, breathing hard. She could see in Vexthor's eyes that he expected her to give up, to yield, to admit that she was outmatched. That's what this was really about for him. Not just winning, but breaking her spirit. But humans didn't break easily. More importantly, Katie had been studying him. She had learned his patterns, and she knew something about combat that Vexthor's pride wouldn't let him see. In a long fight, endurance mattered more than strength. The battle continued. 5 minutes became 10. 10 became 15. Vexthor was stronger and more skilled, but he was also older and carrying more muscle mass. In the arena's standard gravity, that mass required more energy to move. Meanwhile, Katie's smaller frame and human endurance training meant she could maintain her effort level longer. She watched his attacks begin to slow, just slightly. His breathing became heavier, his movements less precise, and Katie, who had just survived a high-gravity endurance course, was used to pushing through exhaustion. She changed her strategy. Instead of just defending, she started to counterattack. Quick strikes that didn't try to overpower him but aimed at vulnerable spots. Joints, the gaps in his armor, places where even a lighter strike would register as a point. Vexthor blocked most of them, but not all. Katie scored her first point with a strike to his knee joint. The impact sensor registered the hit. The crowd erupted in shock. Vexthor's expression darkened. He attacked with renewed fury, but fury made fighters sloppy. Katie had learned this from watching human martial arts recordings. Angry fighters telegraphed their moves, committed too fully to attacks, left themselves open. She ducked under a wide swing and struck at his ribs. Second point. The arena went wild. Now Vexthor was truly enraged. He abandoned all technique and simply tried to use brute force to crush her. But that was exactly what Katie needed. She let him chase her. Let him waste energy on attacks that missed. She studied his patterns even more carefully, waiting for the perfect moment. It came 30 seconds later. Vexthor committed to a powerful thrust, putting all his weight behind it. Katie sidestepped at the last possible moment, and as his momentum carried him past her, she struck at the back of his knee. His leg buckled and he dropped to one knee. Before he could recover, she placed her baton against the side of his neck where the impact sensor registered. 3 points. Match over. The arena exploded with noise, cheers, shouts, disbelief. Katie stepped back, lowering her weapon. She was exhausted, bruised, and her arms felt like they were made of rubber, but she had won. Vexthor remained on one knee, staring at the ground. Katie could see his hands shaking. For a moment she thought it was rage, but then she realized it was something else, something deeper. She did something that surprised everyone. She extended her hand to help him up. "That's 3 chances I've given you, sir. Most humans stop at 2. Vexthor looked at her extended hand. For a long moment he didn't move. Then slowly he took her hand and let her help him to his feet. His grip was gentle, as if he was afraid of hurting her even now. Admiral Torven descended to the arena floor. "Cadet Brooks has successfully completed all 3 trials. Commander Vexthor, you will issue a public apology and submit to a review of your teaching methods as agreed." Vexthor nodded stiffly. "I acknowledge the terms." He looked at Katie. "You fought well, Cadet. Better than I expected." "Thank you, sir," Katie said. "But I need to know something. Why did you hate me from the start? What did humans do to you?" The question hung in the air. Admiral Torven looked like she wanted to intervene, but Vexthor raised a hand to stop her. "You deserve the truth," he said quietly. 15 years ago, I commanded a Krellian battle group. We were ambushed by pirates using tactics I had never seen before. Unpredictable, chaotic, dishonorable. They used tricks and deception instead of honest combat. My entire unit was destroyed. I survived only because I was recovered from a damaged escape pod." He paused, his voice becoming bitter. "Later I learned those pirates had been trained by human mercenaries. They had learned your species' way of war. Since then I have believed that human tactics were not just dishonorable, but dangerous. When humans began attending this academy, I saw it as a threat to proper military discipline." Katie understood now. "You blamed all humans for what some criminals taught pirates. You projected your trauma onto every human cadet who came here." "Yes," Vexthor admitted. "And when I saw you win that simulation using the same kind of improvised tactics that destroyed my unit, it brought back all those memories. All that pain. I wanted you to fail because, in my mind, you represented everything that had taken my soldiers from me." Katie took a deep breath. "Sir, those tactics you call dishonorable? They're how humans survived on Earth. We weren't the strongest predators. We weren't the fastest. We survived by being smart, adaptable, and unpredictable. That's not dishonorable. That's who we are." "I am beginning to understand that," Vexthor said. "When you asked if I wanted a second chance, you weren't mocking me. You were offering me exactly what you said. A chance to reconsider, to choose a different path. I was too angry to see it. And now?" Katie asked. Vexthor looked around at the arena, at the hundreds of cadets watching this moment. "Now I see that I have been teaching from a place of fear and pain rather than wisdom and experience. That is not acceptable. I owe you more than an apology, Cadet Brooks. I owe you thanks for showing me that I had become exactly what I feared. Someone who judges an entire species by the actions of a few. He turned to Admiral Torven. I will issue the public apology as required, but I would also like to request that Cadet Brooks be assigned to me as a special student. If she will accept, I would like to learn from her as much as she learns from me. Katie was stunned. You want me as your student? After everything? Who better to teach me about humans than one who has proven herself 3 times over? Vexthor said, and for the first time Katie saw him smile. It was awkward, as if he was out of practice, but it was genuine. 3 days after the trials ended, the entire academy gathered in the main assembly hall. Commander Vexthor stood at the podium, his massive form somehow looking smaller than usual. Katie sat in the front row with the other cadets, watching as her former adversary prepared to fulfill his obligation. I stand before you to apologize, Vexthor began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall, to Cadet Katie Brooks specifically and to all human cadets generally. I allowed personal trauma to cloud my judgment. I judged an entire species by the actions of a few individuals. I created an environment of hostility where there should have been learning. For this I am deeply sorry. The hall was silent. This was unprecedented. Krellian culture valued honor and strength. Public apologies were rare and significant. But Vexthor continued, going beyond what was required. More than that, I want to explain what I have learned. When Cadet Brooks asked if I wanted a second chance, I thought she was mocking me. Now I understand she was offering me something that humans value deeply. The opportunity to grow from mistakes rather than being defined by them. This is a concept my species struggles with. We see second chances as weakness. Humans see them as opportunities. He looked directly at Katie. Cadet Brooks gave me not 1 chance but 3. She won each trial, but more importantly, she showed me that strength comes in many forms. Human adaptability, persistence, and willingness to offer dignity even to enemies are strengths I failed to recognize. I was wrong, and I am grateful for the lesson. The assembly erupted in applause. Katie felt her face flush. She hadn't expected this level of public acknowledgement. Over the following month, something remarkable happened. Commander Vexthor didn't just apologize, he changed. He began attending human culture seminars. He studied Earth military history. He approached Katie frequently with questions about human psychology and tactical philosophy. Their mentorship became mutual. Vexthor taught Katie advanced Krellian combat techniques and strategic thinking. Katie taught him about human improvisation and the importance of psychological warfare. They began developing joint training exercises that combined the disciplined power of Krellian tactics with the creative flexibility of human approaches. Other cadets noticed the change. Vexthor's classes became less about crushing spirits and more about building capabilities. He still pushed cadets hard, but now he pushed them to find their own strengths rather than conforming to a single standard. Linda watched this transformation with amazement. I can't believe it, she told Katie one evening as they studied together. Vexthor just approved my tactical proposal. He said it was creative. I never thought I'd hear him use that word as a compliment. People can change, Katie said, looking up from her datapad. They just need a reason to, and someone willing to believe they can. But the real test of their new alliance came 6 months after the trials. Katie was in the training center when the alarms began blaring. The Academy's defensive shields activated automatically. Through the windows she could see ships dropping out of hyperspace near the station. Not Academy ships, raiders. She ran to the command center where Admiral Torven was already coordinating the response. What's happening? Raiders, the Admiral said grimly. A large force. They probably thought a training academy would be an easy target with limited defenses. They were wrong about that, but were still outnumbered. Where's Commander Vexthor? Katie asked, leading the defensive fighter squadron. But we need someone coordinating station defenses. Our tactical officer is off station. Cadet Brooks, you're the best tactical mind we have available. I need you at that console. Katie didn't hesitate. She took the tactical station and began assessing the situation. 20 raider ships, mixed classes, attacking in a loose formation. The Academy had defensive fighters and the station's own weapons, but they were designed for training, not real combat. She opened a communication channel. Commander Vexthor, this is Cadet Brooks on Station Tactical. I have a plan, but it requires coordination between your fighters and my station defenses. Vexthor's voice came back immediately. I am listening, Cadet. The raiders are expecting us to defend traditionally. Let's show them what happens when Krellian strength meets human creativity. Over the next hour, Katie and Vexthor executed a defense that became legendary at the Academy. Katie used every trick she had learned, turning the station's training facilities into improvised weapons. Mining simulation equipment became real cutting lasers. Tractor beams designed for moving cargo grabbed raider fighters and threw them into each other. She even convinced the station's automated systems to broadcast false sensor readings that made it appear reinforcements were arriving. Meanwhile, Vexthor's fighter squadron used the confusion Katie created. His Krellian discipline and combat experience meant his pilots never wasted shots or broke formation unnecessarily. But instead of rigid tactics, he adapted constantly to the opportunities Katie's chaos created. The raiders, expecting an easy target, found themselves facing a coordinated defense that seemed to predict their every move, while simultaneously doing completely unpredictable things. Ships that tried to flee ran into traps. Ships that attacked found themselves targeted by weapons from unexpected angles. The raider commander finally broadcast a retreat order. The attacking ships fled into hyperspace, having accomplished nothing except losing a quarter of their force. When it was over, Katie slumped in her chair, exhausted. Vexthor's fighter squadron landed and he came directly to the command center. He looked at Katie, then at Admiral Torven. That, he said, is what happens when different species work together, combining their strengths instead of competing. This cadet and I won this battle together, each of us essential to the victory. Admiral Torven smiled. I believe you have both learned something important. This is what the Galactic Defense Forces should be. Many species, many approaches, united in purpose. The months passed. Katie continued her studies, now with Vexthor as both instructor and colleague. Their joint training programs became so successful that other academies began requesting copies. The pairing of human and Krellian teaching methods created better-rounded officers. Finally, graduation day arrived. Katie stood with her class in dress uniform, waiting to receive her commission. She wasn't the top graduate by traditional rankings. Her scores were excellent, but not perfect. However, Admiral Torven had something special planned. Cadet Katie Brooks, the Admiral announced, for exceptional tactical ability, demonstrated courage, and significant contribution to interspecies understanding and cooperation. You are hereby commissioned as an ensign in the Galactic Defense Forces with special commendation. The hall erupted in applause. Katie walked across the stage to receive her insignia. As she turned to face the audience, she saw Commander Vexthor in the front row. He stood and saluted her. The entire Krellian contingent followed his example. Then the Valorans stood. Then every species represented in the hall was standing, saluting a human ensign who had changed their academy. After the ceremony, Katie found Vexthor outside the hall. Thank you, sir, for everything, for being willing to change. I should thank you, Vexthor replied. You offered me a second chance when you had every right to be angry. You taught me that humans don't just overcome adversity. You offer the same opportunity to others. You took a third chance, Katie said with a smile. That's what made the difference. What are your orders, Ensign? Vexthor asked. I'm assigned to the exploration ship Nova's Path. We're mapping the outer territories. Should be interesting. Good, you will do well. And perhaps someday we will serve together again. Katie extended her hand. Vexthor shook it, his massive hand engulfing hers, but his grip was careful and respectful. As Katie walked to the transport that would take her to her new assignment, she thought about everything that had happened. She had come to the academy hoping to prove that humans belonged in the galaxy. She had succeeded, but not in the way she expected. She hadn't just proven human capability. She had shown that the human concept of second chances, of offering dignity and choice even to adversaries, could transform enemies into allies. That was perhaps humanity's greatest strength. Not just surviving impossible situations, but helping others become better versions of themselves. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges. But Katie was ready, and somewhere behind her, a Krellian commander who had learned to value human wisdom was making sure the next generation of cadets understood that strength came in many forms. The human who smiled when threatened had changed more than her own fate. She had changed what it meant to be part of the Galactic Defense Forces, and that was just the beginning.